red light goes on and I just like staring like.
We're back. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be joining us from. My name is Devin Morgan, Director of Baseball at Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy. This is Driveline Academy Podcast, world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast. I'm joined by, as per usual, by my brother, my partner, my co-host, Driveline Academy Assistant Director, Driveline Academy International Man, and Mr. Jeremy Tecteal. That might be the fastest.
And with like the time off, I honestly was expecting a little slower.
Sure.
Just like to get back in, and that was impressive.
Yeah, man, shoot or shoot.
Yeah.
We're showing off like a little bit more of the revised space.
Each week we're going to get 6 more inches.
The frame is going to just get like consecutively wider. I feel like I have to look through the microphone now to talk to you, which is great.
Over.
Housekeeping, as per usual. Axbat.com, code DL20, get yourself 20% off. Domineering Legislature 20,
Ooh.
get yourself 20% off. Allegedly, the holidays are soon approaching. I got notifications from like a bunch of retailers that have apps on my phone that they were already starting Black Friday. So presumably, if you listen to this podcast, you have someone in your life or you coach someone that plays baseball or softball or some sort of bat and ball sport. Amusingly enough, Axbat.com has tools for you. So DL20, 20% off. And in the spirit of giving, just to reiterate as per usual, this money that we get off of the sponsorship does not pay for my shoe fund. It does not pay for your jet skis.
Or new car.
Or new car. What it does do is go directly into a fund that is exclusively used by us for scholarship for kids to be able to play for our academy teams in Washington and in Arizona. So if you want to buy yourself a game bat, buy yourself some training bats, and you want to do some good in the world, this is a pretty direct opportunity. So DL20, 20% off. What did I say? Domineering Legislature? Yeah, sure. DL20.
I'll throw another plug in there because,
yes,
dear listener, whenever you're listening to this, we probably have our Black Friday sale going on at drivelinebaseball.com. So swing by drivelinebaseball.com.
Yep.
Check out our sale.
Yep.
It's one time a year. Get all your gear.
Yeah, we missed an episode last week, so we're recording this on a Monday. I'm going to try to get it out tomorrow, which means I think by the time that tomorrow hits, you should still be able to sign up for early access to the Driveline Baseball Black Friday sale. And I guess because we are in a promoting mood, I will also tell you two things that are relative to that. New youth individual player kit and new youth team development kit. We slashed the prices and the amount of equipment that was in both of those things to make it a ton more accessible. We revised the instruction manual that comes with that thing. So now you're getting like a 40-page PDF that talks a lot about not only what to do, but also why, because obviously, like constantly in youth baseball, that's a pretty critical thing for us to hit on. So you'll be able to find those things on Driveline's site during the Black Friday sale, discounted. So drivelinebaseball.com, go do the thing. Yeah, it's nice to be back, dude.
It is.
It's nice to be back.
Yeah.
I miss talking with you. I miss doing these. All for good reasons.
Yeah, I mean, an entire week that
I know.
we didn't see each other a single time.
I know.
That does not happen very often.
No, very, very odd. And the reason for that is that I was in a good old Kansas City for the second annual ABCA Youth Summit. I am a proud member of ABCA's National Youth Committee. They have two committees that kind of revolve around youth baseball, the Youth Committee and then the Travel Ball Committee. Ton of intersection is the word they use nowadays between those two things. And amusingly, at the Youth Summit, we actually had people that are on both committees there. Pretty cool to be in that room with a bunch of stakeholders and certainly also people that kind of see both the flaws that we have talked about fairly consistently, but also see some commonality in the path forward, which is great. You know, the first summit last year was in Virginia. Man, I want to move to Virginia. Virginia. Shout out to people living in Virginia. You have a beautiful state with like a lot of great baseball, which I just previous to, I guess I'm just as a West Coast guy, I had no idea, but like it's legit. So the first summit that we had last year.
Don't let Chad Longworth hear that you didn't know that there was legit there.
I know. I'm Chad. I love you. The first summit that we had last year was largely just, I think, getting a lot of perspective on the issues that we're all seeing. And those issues are relatively common across different divisions of youth baseball. You think about something like the umpire issue, right? You know, the systemic thing that we're dealing with is that we have an older crew of umpires that are currently like on the front lines now, and there isn't like a second generation of them trailing behind. So then we see things like, tournament organizers going like, "Hey, do you want to be an umpire? We'll train you," which is very different than an umpire that's been doing this for 5 years, but was trained under an umpire that's been doing this for like 35 years, and then you just kind of get that funnel going. And obviously, there's a ton of downstream things that happen negatively to our game if we don't have umpires. And I think like things like the umpire issue are very much like the tip of the proverbial iceberg of stuff that we talked about. Sure. A lot of the way that the conversation was going last year was kind of for an idea that I guess I've stumped for. It's a problem and it's an opportunity, right? It's I was listening to this relationship podcast. They talk about a complaint is really a desire in disguise. It's like, okay. I mean, I'm bordering on 20 years of my marriage, man. I want to learn as much as I can. I'm trying
that tracks. That makes sense.
Like I'm trying to take this thing to the grave, dude. Yeah. So
you did sign a contract. So.
I did in front of God and everybody. I stepped on the glass, did the whole thing. So the agreement, I think the idea of the agreement is both kind of a reflection of the problems we have, but also a reflection of the opportunity. Where if we can't agree, like first principles, core intention of youth baseball, it's natural that we have all this stuff that kind of stems out of disagreement. Right. And to me, at the end of the day, youth baseball, if there is any level that should be expressly focused on development, it has to be the youth level. Yeah. There is an appropriate time for us to focus on competitive results. I think that time is not when kids are kids.
Yeah.
And progressively, over the course of the youth baseball experience, we want to lean a little bit more into the competitive side of things. Again, this broadly tracks with the USA Baseball LTAD doc, other sports perception on the way they should kind of periodize a focus from training and engagement and fun progressively into more competition. Yeah. But because coaches as a whole, we don't have an agreed upon intention, and we also lack a system to train coaches at scale, then we suffer kind of the natural outcome of those flaws.
Right.
I did a little presentation of which I dropped some of the slides on my social this weekend. There's a great quote by William Edwards Deming, who was like an economist / business theorist / composer. I mean, you talk about like a Renaissance man.
I was just say a real, true Renaissance man.
And his quote kind of on this whole thing is, every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets.
Gets.
So in youth baseball, the absence of a system gives us the outcomes we're at right now. So year one for the youth summit, we really just kind of talked about that type of stuff, and I think year two we finally got to a place where we are starting to think about taking some action out of this. And for me, it's like we had the first one, and I was like, all right, look, let's go fix this right now. And the ball does move a little bit more slowly when you're talking about large organizations, large bodies of players. But I think the motivation is there for sure, which is great. And I think the way that we're kind of thinking about framing it, where the general idea would be if you can create some sort of group of people that are in agreement with this stuff and have that agreement be something that is sensible and safe and positive for kids, then you end up with a little bit of a market differentiator between people that are comfortable at being in agreement on that stuff and people who are not.
Right.
And I think ultimately that's probably the way that this thing should go, where, in the marketplace, us parents, I'll put on my parent hat, right? Like, we're going to vote with our dollars. Like, we are going to either positively agree that organizations or teams that are in agreement with this type of stuff, that is defined in very, very clear terms, like, hey, if you're part of Driveline Academy, that means you abide by MLB PitchSmart. Right. As we talked about at length, PitchSmart isn't a perfect standard. I think a lot of times we're more. I don't want to say safer. I guess what's the word I'm looking for? we're more mindful of workload than we are pitch smart. But broadly, I think we end up being a little bit more conservative than that otherwise might be.
With driveline specifically? Yeah. Oh, 100%. We're way more conservative than pitch smart.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that, hey, we could say, academy teams are, the, positive athlete first alliance, whatever you want to call it, right? And by saying that, we go, hey, like, this is something we believe in, right? All of our coaches are going to go through X type of training, and whether that's concussion awareness, sexual abuse, bullying awareness, lightning strike awareness.
Shouldn't have been standing there.
Anything like that not on the jokey lightning awareness side, but like actually sends a really positive signal to parents that, like, hey, this organization is going to make some choices about your child in consideration of these broad values is a really good thing.
Yeah.
So we're moving there, which is pretty cool.
Because I think a lot of these things that we talk about, and probably a lot of things you talked about this past week, are symptoms, not necessarily the root cause of the problems. They're symptoms that come from not having this training system. That's in place, and even down to the umpires, right? Like, we're losing umpires because, by and large, coach and parent behavior has driven them directly out of wanting to do this for not that much money. Not wanting to get abused for a couple hours on a weekend for that much money. So
I mean, that's just the truth.
And I don't blame them. As someone who umpired every single year from when I was 14 all the way through college, like, it was a great job. I would not have done it that long if I had constantly gotten abused by parents. If I was signing up to get abused by parents every weekend, I would not have done it very long at all. I don't even know if I would have started. And making sure coaches know how to act and have a training system around that, a system to hold them accountable, like, we'll just do a lot of work improving umpire quality and start to build back that pipeline of umpires.
Yeah, and I think you're so right, because the solution has to be, like, holistic, right? It has to confront all the aspects of it. Like, do we need more umpire training and more umpires? Like, broadly, yes. But if we just solve for that and you don't solve for the reason why we're leaving, it's like, well, we're just creating a bunch of people that are going to do this for like 3 months and then be out.
Right. I mean, it's the same way, we look at mechanics in most of our youth athletes, is that, like, most of the time when you see something or a parent sees something mechanical that they know doesn't look right, they have a really hard time actually understanding what the root cause of that issue is. They might be able to fix the superficial cause of the issue, but not actually fix the root cause, and, like, start at the bottom of the kinematic chain and work your way up and trying to figure out where it actually broke. So you spend a bunch of time fixing problems that's not the root problem.
Yep, and I'll double down on that. You'll have to fix it in a sticky way, right? So, like, with movement, you have to effectively, like, repattern.
Right.
And if you're going to repattern, you have to address whatever systemic issues have pushed you towards the non-ideal pattern that you're in right now.
Yeah.
That same thing is applicable to the system of youth baseball, this relationship between parents, coaches, and umpires. So there's all that. I did a lot of just kind of like the state of youth baseball from our perspective. The one thing that dropped right before I left to go to Kansas City was the Aspen Institute's new study numbers for 2023. Which
are they going to be right here?
Yeah, I'll have to put them maybe
higher above the microphone.
I'll put them here. You watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, right?
I do.
So there's a meme that came up Brooklyn Nine-Nine with, like, Captain Holt, where he does, like, full on, like, the Tiger Woods thing. And he's like, validation.
Yeah.
I saw those numbers drop from Aspen Institute, and, like, it doesn't make me happy.
I was just saying, we would rather not be validated, honestly.
It doesn't make me happy to have been screaming about this for like 5+ years, perhaps closer to 10, and then see stuff like this and be like, I was right. Yeah. It's terrible.
Right.
So if you go to projectplay.org, you can find the stats yourself. And again, I will try to put them here-ish. But the big takeaways from baseball is 2 things. Overall baseball participation is down 20% from 2019 to 2022. And the moment that I say that, I think logically you would go like, oh, well, COVID. And for sure. However, Baseball's drop in participation, once again, is disproportionately worse than any other sport. So what does that tell you? You know, I should have brought up the slides, or maybe I'll just throw a slide here. But yeah, like that's part of it. And then again, the retention issue that we've been talking about like ad nauseum for years. Weirdly enough, our drop in retention is also worse, once again, than any other sport. It's disproportionate. And yes, you know, there's some questions were raised about like, well, where do these numbers come from? And they come from like the National Center of Sport and Fitness, I believe. And look, like I don't know where that number really comes from. So I suppose that there might be, you know, some plus minus a couple percentage points, right? But the disproportionate nature of it isn't you know, that's the issue. That's the issue.
This is like the conversation I had with a 15-year-old when we did our parent-player meetings, and they lost 4 pounds over a month,
yeah,
which is the opposite of what we're trying to do. And they were like, well, I think I drank a lot of water the first time I did it, so maybe I was just like a little bloated. And I was like, I mean, sure. Like, if we assume that that's true,
yeah,
maybe 1.5 pounds. Like, this is
Yeah.
4 pounds. Like, that cannot possibly make up for this entire difference.
No.
So, like,
no.
sure, maybe there are a couple percentage points off here and there. That's
Yeah.
not making up for the actual massive difference
Yeah.
between baseball and other sports.
Yeah, and like, and again, you know, maybe there's some plus minus on the margin here. And one of the things that I did hear is that one of the largest club select travel team organizations, they had 28,000 unique teams registered with them last year. That's a lot.
Yep.
But again, if part of this overall issue with retention and participation, which we disproportionately suffer compared to any other major sport, if a ton of kids are leaving rec ball, for example, and some of those kids are going to play travel or club ball, that's still like a net loss, because you're cutting off. You know, the issue with kids leaving rec for travel or club is not just like you lose the best players, but when you lose not only like your A tier players, and then the B tier players kind of leave with them.
Nobody left. There's not enough kids left to run a league.
Yes, it's it gets real bad real fast. So that was, you know, that it was really great timing to get really bad news, because you know, having that drop right before we go out into the meeting, I think it gives everybody some incentive to figure out like, how are we going to try to fix this.
You would hope.
So it was, you know, that part of it was good. I did some stuff about like our perspective on data and engagement. I brought out the old Bob Feller throwing a heater in dress slacks and flats versus a motorcycle from like 1939 to try to make the point that like, hey, look, you know, a lot of people that we've discussed ad nauseum on here, Smoltzy, spray tan guy, etc., have some real strong feelings about, you know, the integration of technology in our game. But like, if you have Bob Feller throwing a fastball against a motorcycle to try to figure out how hard he's throwing, that's just a different type of technology. It's crude. It's very crude, but it's technology, and you can't act like this is a new thing. And then the other thing we talked a lot about was pulse. You know, pulse was a pretty big thing. Was able to show kind of what it actually looks like from our onboarding after taking some time off to like actually progressively build up throwing workload. If you're an academy kid listening to this podcast, or an academy parent who has a kid playing for us, sync your pulse, charge it. That's the biggest blocker with pulse.
Lucas, sync your pulse.
Yeah. It's the.
He tells me he listens to every single podcast,
Okay.
and we never mention him. So
Lucas, we love you. Also, sync your
pulse.
flipping pulse. So we're able to get into that side of things, and you know, I don't take those type of opportunities for granted, because number one, being able to be in a room with people that are actually invested in trying to fix things and have the power or leverage to do so it like fires me up, because we've been talking about this stuff for a while. So the fact that other people are seeing it pretty clean is good. So yeah, that was Kansas City. The only bad thing about my trip This is going to be the hottest take.
I was just gonna say, talk about most dangerous baseball podcast.
Okay.
This is gonna be tough.
Hey, look, Kansas City, you got to talk to me. Your barbecue disappointed me, and I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what you want me to say. You know, like brisket and burnt ends should be something you do at like a really high level. I presume that going in, so maybe my expectations are too high because what I got was like. It was fine.
You better hope our chief of staff, Emily Coolbaugh, doesn't watch this podcast.
Emily, I'm sorry. We talked about trying to go out, and I was too busy with work. Yeah, man. Here's the worst part about it. On Friday, I actually took the day off so that Danny and I went down to Portland to go see LeBron. Finally, never seen LeBron play in person before, and we went to a barbecue place outside of Portland called Patna's. It was legit barbecue. Like soup. It was phenomenal. Phenomenal. Way better than anything I had in Kansas City. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
He's not just doing it for the engagement.
No, I'm not. Look, man, I would love to have, like, hey, I put down, half a pound of brisket, half a pound of burnt ends. Like, I was coming off of a big lift on Monday. I was ready to do that. Yeah. Didn't. Portland took care of me, though.
Was it better or worse than the Kool-Aid pickles in Nashville?
Ooh, the Kool-Aid pickles were... I mean, I respect the ingenuity. Like I respect a creative endeavor. Kool-Aid pickles were not the jam for me. But that banana pudding that they had was elite. So I'm going to say better than Kool-Aid pickles, okay, but much worse
than expectations.
Than the barbecue I had in Portland. And I like Portland barbecue. Anyways, so yeah, that was the ABCAU Summit, man. It was just really good to get out there. Huge shout outs, as per usual, to Rob Haney and Ryan Brownlee at ABCA. We haven't really talked about ABCA as like a membership thing on here. So like a couple of things I will tell you. Number one, the youth sector at ABCA is effectively, I want to say, the second biggest like group that they have of users right now. If it's not the second biggest, hold on, let me see. Okay, biggest member groups by type at ABCA. High school coaches, like that's part of it. That's number one. Part of that involves our youth from like 14, 15 to 18. College coaches, second biggest. Third biggest, youth academy and travel. And like, I mean that I don't know that Rob wants me to put the numbers out, so like I won't put them out, but they're really, really close.
Yeah.
Really, really close. So I'll, again, we don't really have an official, I'll talk to Rob and we'll do like this, like an ABCA ambassador thing. But like the ABCA membership in and of itself, if you're coaching, is going to give you a ton of resources. It's going to give you like membership in and of itself is going to give you some benefits. Like, have you heard about like their car rental thing?
No.
We
talked. This was the thing at ABCA last year.
Yeah, the ABCA membership has some sort of like crazy national discount on car rental that like if you just rent a car once over the course of the year, it just pays for itself. Yeah. And then you also have all this video library of like every ABCA convention ever. Yeah. So
even if you don't rent cars, you should get an ABCA membership.
Yeah, I mean it's
if you're too young to rent a car, get an ABCA membership. Then by the time you can rent a car, you'll be in the money. You'll be great.
They do have a player tier of memberships in ABCA.
Oh, very cool.
Because for a lot of kids, they're college kids that know they want to go into coaching, so that's how they start. So yeah, that's an ABCA recap.
And if you're an ABCA member, come and say hi to us at the booth.
Yeah, man, come find us. We'll be there in Dallas doing the thing. I guess we'll just talk about that now. I think we got two things going on for us for book. Specifically at ABCA. Friday night, clear your calendar. There's going to be a thing happening. I don't have full details, but we're going to do like a dinner speech type of thing. I wrote the speech on the plane, like 90% of it. Cried a lot for the first like 40% of it, and I was like,
it was just the altitude though. Right?
Yeah. It's definitely the altitude. It's not the fact that I'm just like a gigantic softy under this, the beard and shaved head. Yeah, man, I was like trying to write about like why the reason that I actually started to change as a coach. which involves my grandparents and like my kids, and it's So I wrote that and was terrified that the lady sitting next to me thought that I was just like a complete psychopath. Like
she did.
Yeah, probably. Although she and her husband were watching some weird like nature breakdown. I don't know.
And also crying?
No, it was some real Seattle vibes.
Okay.
Like watching a bunch of people like stomp around in nature. It's like, we got that. And then on Saturday, it looks like we're going to do like a pizza and beer get together thing to talk about the book too. So we're not going to be on stage talking about the book this year. So if you're coming to ABCA, definitely come check out like the Pulse and Tech presentations, because that stuff is going to be gas. But we're going to have something for you on Friday night and Saturday night. Details forthcoming.
And come and say hi.
And then we'll be at the booth, man. We'll be chopping it up. A very interesting study got pre-published that I saw this morning, that I think goes along with some of the stuff we're talking about just kind of the challenge with coaching, with training coaches, and specifically training coaches with the information we have available to us now, which is very different than like this is how I've always done it, and this is how it was done to me, so therefore it's how I'm always going to do it. So the study is called A Smile Can Go a Long Way, the effects of dominant and rewarding smiles of coaches on athletes in an evaluative performance context. And to just like cut right to it, the present results are the first to show that subtle differences in facial expressions of coaches can affect an athlete's heart rate and affective state in evaluating performance context. The results join research on the interpersonal effects of nonverbal behavior between athletes and their coaches. They provide evidence that the facial expression of coaches have communicative context that is perceived by the athletes and influences them on different levels. And I was thinking about this like literally yesterday when we were having our on-field. I think the hardest thing to do as a coach is like have a kid frustrate you, and figuring out the appropriate time to like, because sometimes you do have to hold them accountable, and that's probably not coming with a smile. But then to balance that with the other thing where, like, hey, when we were doing the T scrimmage. So the plan was we were going to have a machine pitch scrimmage yesterday. Got to the field and we had no power. Adapt and overcome.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, fine. It's going to do T scrimmage. And I honestly didn't kind of hate it, because there were a moment where like we had 3 hard hit balls that were caught by the same center fielder, or 4 maybe. And it was like, okay, like figure it out.
Mateo. Whew.
Yeah, man, that kid was.
I don't think you watched this, but.
Yeah, but he was all over center field, just gloving everything. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. I'm interested to see if the kids are going to figure this out, because like, that guy's just catching everything. So hit it somewhere else. But anyways,
I did tell them that. Hey guys, enough hitting the ball directly at this guy in center field or within a 30 feet vicinity of him in either direction.
Make an adjustment, But at one point, I think with the younger kids, they were finishing up, and I was just trying to coach a little bit on third base to try to make them like get in the habit of coming around 2 and looking at the base coach at 3. And Quinn in particular. There were a couple times where he just came hard into the bag, no slide. And I'm like, down, 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 no slide. Happens again, down, down, no slide. And like, it's like, okay, this is one of those moments where I want to coach with a smile, right? I don't want you to, because like the first time that I said to him about it, he was like, yes, sir. It's like, I mean, I suppose I've got enough gray in my beard now that like I'm leaning that way, but like I don't need the yes, sir. But then the second time I was like, all right, like, do you know why this is important?
Yeah.
Like let's start there. And he was like, so I don't get out? I was like, well, yeah, part of it is I do want you to slide so you don't get out. But there's a lot of action happening there, and I also don't want you to wear a ball off the head. I don't, it's just a cleaner way to try to come in and get that bag. And I tried to deliver that message with a smile, because like I don't want his fear of failure,
right,
or
disappointing you.
Yeah, or disappointment to get in the way of the thing that I actually care about. I mean, I think I care about his learning. I care a lot more about the learning than about you potentially like feeling like you let me down or whatever. But then there are those other moments, like there's those other moments too where, look, I need to communicate the seriousness, and I can't. We're not going to be smiling here.
No. I had those moments yesterday with one of the guys on my team. I think a couple hard things there. One, especially if you don't have a strong relationship with that athlete.
Yeah.
Smiling is huge because they don't know you.
Yep.
And knowing that you're coming from a place of, I'm on your team here, we're just like working through this together.
Yeah.
With a smile is much better than the, yes, sir, I'm afraid to say anything other than yes, sir to you.
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to say the minimum amount of words to get away from this conversation because I'm like terrified that you're gonna light into me.
Right, and like I am afraid to now fail so that you don't tell me down again or whatever it is. Where it's like no, like that's okay that you failed. Like we're learning. Like this is how I want you to learn, and it's always easier when there's like a smile that comes with it. The other part, which I have difficulty with, and I don't know anybody who doesn't have difficulty with, is it's when there's a situation where you have to hold the kid accountable without a smile.
Yeah.
You kind of get the ass a little bit, and it's hard to immediately turn around and deal with a different kid who doesn't deserve the ass.
Dude,
and have a smile on your face.
I've been there.
When you're really frustrated with one of your kids, it can tend to leak over into your interactions with other kids on the team.
Yeah.
And that can be really detrimental because they didn't do anything to earn that.
Yeah.
So, like, that's a thing that I work hard at, and I feel like I messed it up, like, once or twice yesterday because I was really frustrated with one of the kids. And then immediately, like, pulled the kids aside and been like, hey, this is why I'm saying that. Like, you know that, right? Like,
yep.
And it's like, yeah, okay.
It's so difficult, man. Like, it's really hard. Like, Michelle and I were walking the dog the other night, and I was bitching about something that happened at home, and she was like, "Well, I'm sorry," and I was like, no, man, I'm not asking you to be held accountable here. I'm not. This isn't about you at all. This is me.
Yeah.
This is me, and managing my expectations, right? And it's so difficult when you're coaching a group of kids to like, hey, like. Man, I would love to say that I'm good at being able to go like, I'm going to coach with a smile for Quinn, and then this other kid I'm going to have to hold accountable. But then if Quinn comes up again, that I'm going to act like I'm just like this white sheet,
right.
That I've flipped the page, man. It's hard.
Yeah,
it's really hard.
Or like post practice, I have a few gentlemen on my team who always come up and, all right, what can I do better? Man, what did I mess up today? What can I do better? Right?
I love that.
Which I also love.
Yep.
But if I'm post-practice immediately talking to this one kid that I'm really frustrated with, you can almost start to see them slink away because they see my body language, they hear my tone, and they're like, oh, I shouldn't ask him a question right now. Like I don't want to catch some strays here. Like so it's immediately being able to turn to them and be like, no, you guys, like, come here. Like, what do you got? Which I know what their question's going to be, but that is something that, like, it's going to be really hard. And I also think, like, this paired with, the study that came out years ago that like high fives and physical contact are like a good indicator of like winning percentage.
Yeah.
And it's like, sure, there might be some correlation versus causation of like teams that win are probably going to high five a lot more than teams that don't.
Yeah.
But like the combination of the non-verbal communication, whether it's physical or just body language, is so massive and is so much larger than the actual verbal confrontations I have and like the verbal coaching I do. The verbal coaching makes zero difference if it's coming with the wrong body language or the wrong tone or the wrong demeanor. And like the vast majority of coaches that I watch might have something good to say, but immediately are turning off athletes just by the way they're saying it to them.
Yeah, and especially at the youth level, It's funny, I was Mark Gorman, Pudge, who's the head coach at Madison High School, which is a 6A school in Virginia, was out at this summit thing. And Pudge was telling a story about like their playoff run this year. And he goes, they had a game where it was like they had kind of been like the cardiac kids a little bit a couple times and had to come from behind, and they were playing a rival school, and they were chasing 5, I think, and they had first and third and 1 down, and Pudge goes out to the mound, calls a mound visit to bring in a new kid, and he goes, boys, I don't know what to tell you. It's like, I think we're going to win this game. It's like, here's what I need you to do. I need you to strike this guy out, and then we're going to go get this next out, and we're going to go win this game. And I think it's one of those moments where, man, chasing 5, first and third, 1 down, late in the game, very likely that you're going to go to that mound visit, like, red-assed, because you're not where you want to be.
Right.
And it's one of those things where, you just wonder about, like, the butterfly effect of going out there and showing kids the other side of things. Like, hey, you're probably expecting me to come out here and I'm going to be hot. And it's like, no, I'm just going to I'm going to tell you that I think you're capable of this. Yeah. And then weirdly, I mean, I'm sure that, for every, Pudge that I talk to that tells me that story about him having that type of moment with his kids and they respond and they go on to win state, there might be another 5 where, like, somebody's trying to do that thing and it goes the other way.
Yeah, because you can't just say that, right?
Yeah.
Like, Pudge actually felt that, probably.
Yeah.
And believed that, right?
Yeah.
And, like, the kids got that. It's one thing to, like, have that belief in your kids that, we are not out of this game. Like, let's go and get this. We are better than this. And it's another to just, like, say it to try to make the situation a little bit better. Yeah. And, like, kids will pick up on that really quickly.
Yeah, and I really want to read that whole study, about this smiling thing because, the thing that I would imagine that they're doing is trying to measure some indicators of, like, the flight or fight response. Right. Like, I don't know that to be sure, but if I could put on, if I was a scientist, that's probably what I'd like to engage in. And think about, trying to put your athletes in one of those states or the other. Well, I don't know that I ever want them to flee. Like, I want them to fight, even if we are chasing 5, and even if it is first and third, and maybe it's first and third with none dead, or maybe it's first and third bases loaded. Like, I want them to fight, but I think I'm very curious to see that full study so we can get an idea of, like, how impactful that stuff is when a coach is able to be a conduit, not for the thing that the kid probably is already afraid of. They want to lean into that flight thing, but trying to subtly, not only through verbal communication, but through non-verbal communication, push them the other direction.
And I think there may not be a better example of that than a mound visit.
Yeah.
Because it is, you very rarely see mound visits in a positive situation.
Yeah.
Danny K's up a guy and swords him. I'm not walking out to the mound to be like, great job, kid, great job, and then turn around and go back, right? Like, it's always a negative thing or perceived as a negative thing when I'm walking out to the mound. And, like, I almost never start with anything negative.
Yeah.
And, like, one of our 14U coaches watched me coach for a while because his kid was on my team for a while, and, like, said, like, he always wanted to know what I said because immediately when I walked out there, the first thing was the pitcher would end up smiling.
Yeah.
And it's like, honestly, most of the time, I know my kids well enough to know what to say to make them smile. Yeah. And I just say that. That's how I start that.
Yeah.
Right? Relax them.
Yeah.
Because they know why I'm coming out there.
Yeah.
It's not a mystery to any pitcher when there's a mound visit why their coach is slowly walking towards the mound.
Yeah.
Maybe it takes me 12 seconds to get to the mound. That's a 12-second period where they're thinking everything that I'm about to already tell them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like the principal, you're walking in the principal's office.
You're walking in the principal's
office. Yeah.
And, this is something that I learned from a pro pitching coach that I was on the same staff as, who I, like, really loved the way he approached mound visits. I'm not going to tell any of the stories because they're all the best one is mildly inappropriate, and they range to, like, extremely inappropriate. But, like, the whole thing was he knew he didn't need to say anything. They knew. He's coming out there. They know already why he's coming out there. Yeah. What's he going to do? Tell him to throw strikes? Tell him to stop giving up hits? Like, they know, right? Yeah. His goal was, I got to relax him. Yeah. That's like, I'm going out there. I'm going to crack jokes. I'm going to make these guys laugh. I'm going to relax them and ease the tension a little bit.
Yeah.
to try to get them a little bit more comfortable and relaxed on the mound. And that, to me, is the goal. Every time I go out to the mound, I just got to relax you because I know you're capable. I know what you're capable of doing. I wouldn't have put you on the mound if I didn't know what you were capable of doing. And we're just not at our capability right now. So we got to relax, get a little bit more comfortable, and go attack the hitters.
Yeah.
And it's always just about, like, refocusing them. But, like, if you're a coach who doesn't actually believe that they're capable of doing the job on the mound,
well,
they know. And that message is, like, really clear when you go out there.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I think about stuff like this. I think it's really cool to be able to see that, you know, people are doing this type of work out there to try to quantify this effect that coaches can have on kids. And, you know, shoot, I think there's just a lot of signal there for anybody that's coaching their own kid. There's probably a lot of verbal and nonverbal influence you don't even realize you have that are literally going to put your kids in a position to be able to compete better.
Yeah, and I think about the PCA concept all the time, the emotional gas tank. Yeah. And, like, you know, I'm thinking about their workload gas tank every game we play. Yeah. But I'm also thinking about the emotional gas tank. Yeah. And you can tell, if you know a kid even remotely well, you can tell in their body language when their emotional gas tank is pretty depleted. Yeah. And, like, your job as a coach is just to go out there and fill that emotional gas tank. Because there's not anything, like, that's the lowest hanging fruit you can do on that mound visit, is just gassing them up emotionally, because you can give them the best pitching advice ever, and if they're not in a place to hear it because their emotional gas tank is empty, then you just wasted a bunch of words.
You should just listen to those last, like, 20 seconds just on repeat for a while. Because exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.